Good morning to all of you. I would like to start out by greeting Professor João Bosco Monte, and I would like to thank him very much for the invitation to be here. I would also like to mention the presence of Consul General of the United Arab Emirates here in Brazil, Mr. Shahin, and I would like to greet all of those who are here participating in this forum. This forum, I have a great pleasure to be here once again. And this is a forum that brings together business representatives, academics, government players also. And we have a growing relationship in between Brazil and Africa. This year, the forum chose a topic that is especially important and relevant for this moment. So these global partnerships for sustainable agricultural and food security are very relevant. And this topic has total connection to the COP30 meetings that are starting in Belém. And during these meetings that will happen in Belém, which is a very significant city, we will have environmental activists and leaders and representatives of many NGOs from the civil society, and they will have the opportunity to discuss solutions to fight against climate change and to preserve biodiversity. It's a critical discussion to have to avoid the exhaustion of natural resources. And while we are discussing the future of our planet, we also have huge challenges before us. One of them is the challenge of feeding a huge amount of people who many times have no access to a minimum of nutrients and nutritious foods. In this aspect, Brazil can contribute greatly, not only due to the greatness of our agriculture, but the successful experiments in social policies and combating hunger and poverty. It is no coincidence that the FAO recently announced that Brazil is once again off the hunger map globally. So I would like to use this moment to just briefly speak about how the Brazilian government has used their public policies and the strength of our domestic agricultural through our diplomacy to leverage our relationships with Africa even further. Last year, Minister Mauro Vieira was here at the same forum, and he was able to show some concrete evidence of how during President Lula's latest mandate, Brazil and many African countries have taken up their relationship again. I would like to emphasize the central role of food security in this relationship with African countries. Around 6 months ago in Brasilia, we had the second Brazil-Africa dialogue about the combat of hunger and strategies for rural development. As many remember, the first edition of that dialogue happened 15 years ago with the participation of various authorities and specialists from this segment. So, using the same successful format, the event that was held this year counted with 40 different authorities and experts there, such as the Vice President of Tanzania, Swatini, and Ethiopia, along with many other representatives from international organisms, development banks, family agricultural cooperatives, and the private sector. In the opening speech, President Lula highlighted the cooperation between Brazil and Africa for transferring technology, which is essential to increase the gains in technology in the countries that are benefit. These technologies were seen on site by the participants in visits to Brazilian companies around Brasilia.
Which is the driver of the national agriculture for over half a century. As part of this program of dialogue, participants visited the city of Petrolina in the northeast, and there they could get to know details about the solutions developed by Embrapa researchers to develop crops in the semi-arid region. Dialogue about agriculture also meant to continue the practice done by the previous administrations of President Lula in putting together big events around the Africa Day. In the past 2 years, on May 25, we had the presence of Benin President and the Angola President, João Lourenço, who is also the President of the African Union. So both brought so much honor to Brazil. This year, we had this strategic mechanism with Nigeria, with the visit of Vice President Alckmin. And at the end of the year, President Lula shall go to the south of Africa, southern Africa. So relaunching the relationship between Brazil and Africa is reflected in a concrete way, intensifying activities of cooperation in several areas and formats, either in a bilateral manner or with other countries and organizations. In the public sector, the Brazilian Agency of Cooperation connected to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is coordinating and supporting 126 projects in 31 countries in the continent. Those actions are not limited to food security, but we have projects to end poverty, health, education, infrastructure, the environment, water resources monitoring, and others. As it has already been said, the main action is in the proficiency of its agriculture. Sharing experiences in this area is the main resource the country has to offer to other developing countries. Brazil has knowledge and technology grouped in more than 40 agricultural projects with African countries. Those areas go from cattle production to the management of the territory in a sustainable way, public policies, and getting professionals. Not only the quantity, but the diversity of the technology done by Brazilian scientists is very relevant. In a continental country such as Brazil, research centers from Embrapa are scattered in different biomes of Brazil, providing solutions for several cooperation demands coming from different soils and climate countries, such as the African continent, that has 65% of arable lands available in the world. When it comes to the benefits of using Brazilian technologies, it's clear the potential we have to leverage the development of the whole region in Africa. So that was the reason why Brazil decided to reinforce even more agricultural technology transfer in the continent by opening in May 2025 of a cooperation office of Embrapa in Ethiopia. This office works within the Brazilian embassy, aiming at providing a better fluidity on the response of Brazilian technicians to the needs of African countries in the area. A good example of this cooperation is the program of supporting culture to Africa, created in the second term of Lula's administration, receiving support from the Brazilian government. 16 years of operation, the number of countries benefited by that went from 4 to 18, distributed among different regions in the sub-Saharan area of Africa. Tonic culture is an activity of agribusiness that has a very strategic value. With technical support and technology transfer, the beneficiary countries are increasing productivity, adding value to its production. And political aspects, getting closer to Africa includes initiatives in the commercial area. Since 2023, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has organized with Apex Brazil and the Ministry of Agriculture corporate missions to 14 African countries. In addition to commercial missions, the government is putting efforts to open new markets for products of the agribusiness in Brazil. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, negotiations in the current administrations led to the signature of many bilateral agreements, including agricultural aspects in Brazilian embassies in Africa. This has a result in many agreements. So data show an annual variation that is positive of 16% in exports and 15% in imports from Brazil and Africa. So this means a tangible gain in this bilateral interchange. If those results in terms of trade is a result of the effort of corporate missions, opening markets is also made easier by the efforts of 37 embassies and consulates in Africa. And the reduction of representations in Africa in the previous administration, the current administration opened 2 new offices since January 2023 in Kigali Embassy in Uganda and the General Consulate in Luanda, Angola. The Brazilian network is key not only to support commercial missions but also to follow up the contacts we make by the business people that are involved in that action. There is a great margin so that trade with Africa can be increased. That is made clear when we compare the amount of Brazilian commerce with the African countries, with the commerce with China, for example. Africa and China has around 1.5 billion people in each of the countries. The total flow of commerce with the African continent does not represent $25 billion per year, while with China, the Brazilian commerce is of almost 160 billions. There are differences in terms of affordability and diversity commerce, but the potential of growth with Africa is clear. And it's even more evident when we consider the natural resources that are in the country and the fact that Africa now has 60% of their population under 25 years of age. The advancements done with African countries has a lot of room to growth. We're just showing the change that we have in our current policy in terms of foreign affairs, and President Lula always says that the Brazilian society has the biggest number of African descendants outside Africa. This reality not only gives us a historical responsibility, but also opens many opportunities for trade and cooperation to be explored, as we have seen today. The role of the African diaspora will be one of the topics covered in the next month in Lomé, Togo, during the 9th Pan-African Congress, where Brazil will be represented by ministers. Brazil had the honor of contributing with discussions about that topic during the 6th Conference of the African Diaspora in Americas, done in August 2024 in Salvador, Northeast Brazil. Before I finish, I have to recognize the contribution of IBRAF for the cooperation of Brazil and Africa and to strengthening the foreign policies of Brazil and Africa. Since last year, as it was said before, this institute has a project with the our United Arab Emirates, where the Minister of Cooperation and the General Counsel Abdallah Dalashayim were before me, speaking before me, in this project is one of implementation of technical assistance to Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa. This cooperation made us do the first period of training in Embrapa unities in Ceará and Bahia states in Brazil, with resources from the United Arab Emirates and Brazil. 100 young people from Angola and Guinea-Bissau could be trained in crops of cashew and cocoa, and this will be multiplied with the return of the participants going back to their country. So this program is one that shall bear important fruits in this relationship between Brazil and Africa, especially in agriculture. I'd like to compliment IBRAF members, especially João Bosco, for that decision of sharing knowledge with African countries. So those meaningful steps help in the fight against hunger and poverty in the world. As President Lula said in his last speech at the UN General Assembly, fighting against hunger and poverty is the only war we shall take. Thank you very much.